I discovered Bilbarin after filming either side of it. I had visited Bruce Rock and Corrigin on 2 different trips for my previous state hotels video. Both times I was exploring the local area on Google Maps before I left, and in the middle of the 2 towns, a ruined red brick hall caught my attention. No doubt you'd miss it if you blinked while driving past, and I wondered what the story was. Digging deeper, it appears this is not the first time the small town has lost its hall. It's not even the second time. Bilbarin has been unfortunate enough to lose its town hall 3 times to natural disasters. Let's take the drive 3 hours east from Perth, but just 15 minutes north of Corrigin, and find out what happened to the halls, and on that note, the rest of the town. Like many settlements in the Wheatbelt, Bilbarin came about because of the railway. There was massive expansion of the network in the early 20th century. It was hoped that all farms would have convenient rail access to export their goods in a time before widespread adoption of vehicles. The section that ran from Corrigin to Bruce Rock opened in 1914, although Bilbarin was originally gazetted as Woggerlin. A branch of the Primary Producers Association lobbied for the name of the siding to be changed from Woggerlin, as it was getting confused with another siding named Wog-Olin near East Wickerpin. The WAGR changed it to Bilbarin, which was derived from the name of a local Aboriginal water source. The town began to grow, beginning with the construction of a state school in 1916, which was later rebuilt in 1927. The first shop also opened in 1919, originally run by a chap named Mr. Alford. He was originally from Ardif, half an hour up the road. The store appeared to be the focal point of the small town, since there was no pub or hall. It sold a wide range of wares, including groceries, hardware, clothes, alcohol and fuel. A post office was added later on, which included a weekly mail service and a party phone line. Mr. Alford's daughter would even get married in the front room of the shop. Who needs a winery in the Swan Valley? The area received a small boost of population in the early 1920s thanks to soldiers' settlement land schemes. World War I veterans were provided land and established additional farms. But despite the growth in the 1920s, the proximity of Corrigin meant that most major services consolidated there instead, keeping Bilbarin small. Regardless, the first town hall was built in 1920 by local farmers. While it was a simple weatherboard structure, it was still the centre of the community, hosting social events and religious services. Tennis was quite popular too, as it was in many regional communities during this time. As such, the town formed a tennis club in 1926. The tennis courts were originally behind the school and included a shelter made of bush timber. The Corrigin Co-op also opened a branch there in 1926, with the National Bank operating within the premise half a day every week. Additionally, tea rooms were opened in 1928, and the local footy team were particularly strong during this period, winning the flag 3 years in a row from 1926 to 1928. Sport was a big deal in general, with the town including a rather large recreational area to the north. This is all bush now, but I read that the annual sports days were quite the occasion. But it wouldn't be long until Bilbarin lost its first hall. In 1928, it was destroyed by what was described as a cockeyed bob, and hopefully I don't get demonetized for saying that. And if you're not sure what a cockeyed bob is, because I certainly wasn't, it was a destructive and sudden weather event. Bilbarin and the local area suffered through 14mm of rain in just 2 minutes. The entire structure of the hall was gone, with just the floor and the stage surviving. At the very least, a piano was also left intact on the stage. Besides from the hall, houses were also destroyed, the railway station was damaged, and the wheat shed lost its roof. Still, development of the town continued, albeit slowly. A private school was established after the storm. But from what I can tell, this consisted of only 12 students in a single room. This operated from 1929 to 1934. The second hall would be constructed in 1930. It reused the surviving floor of the original hall, but was now built from corrugated iron. A residence for the state school's teacher was also built in 1930. This would encourage them to stay, ensuring the town would always have a teacher. Throughout the 1920s, harvested grain was increasingly delivered to the siding. To cope with demand, in 1933, CBH constructed the Bilbarin bin, and that has a very nice ring to it. It may have been the longest wheat bin in the state, with a total capacity of 4,500 tonnes. The railway reserve was quite a busy part of town during this period. It also included a depot, stockyards, goods shed, waiting shed, weighbridge, and a fettlers' camp. Fettlers were railway maintenance workers. They had so many permanent campsites all along the railway network. But unfortunately for tea and scone lovers, the tea rooms closed in 1934 and was used as a residence, with the building later being demolished in the 1950s. Now, only a few rows of laterite stones remain, marking the garden path. And also unfortunately for town hall lovers, the second incarnation would also be wiped out by a storm in 1936. Again, this also affected other buildings. The school teacher's house lost its roof, for instance. This storm appeared to be even worse than the first. The hall's floor didn't survive this time around, with only a water tank holding its ground thanks to the 2,000 gallons of water it was holding. Pieces of the hall were also found speared into the side of the wheat bin. The community at the time appeared to not bother building a third, as Bilbarin would be without a hall for another 20 years. It wasn't until 1951 that a community meeting decided that they might just be third time lucky. This was spearheaded by a local named Fred Walton. Despite some opposition, he led the charge by raising $4,000 through donations and cropping. The community helped the construction in other ways also, including carting the building materials themselves. And by the 31st of December 1956, Bilbarin had a brand new brick hall. It was completely funded by the community and opened with no debt whatsoever. It included men and women's pan toilets out the back, along with an engine room. Tennis was also still popular, and as such, the club was relocated to behind the hall in 1957. This included 3 courts and a timber frame and asbestos shelter. Bilbarin saw a decline over the next few decades, however. The school had already closed once before in 1938, only to reopen in 1945, but closed again for good in 1965. Public schools required a minimum of 8 students to operate, and as such, the remaining kids were bused to Corrigan instead. The school building was purchased as a residence and relocated elsewhere. The school teacher's house remained, however, continuing to be a residence once the school closed. And while the tennis club had peaked at 45 members in its prime, there were no members by the 1970s and it was demolished. The bitumen courts still poke out of the bushes in the present day. CBH also wrapped up operations in 1974, with the wheat bin demolished in 1982. The site is completely vacant now, although there is a single fence post surviving according to the Heritage Council, although I couldn't locate it. All I found was a loading dock or platform along the railway, and even that is disappearing into the weeds. The post office then closed in 1975, with the shop also closing in 1978. It was then purchased for its liquor license, but never reopened. The co-op had also already closed earlier in 1946. The town oval was also disused by this point, since the school was gone and the footy club had moved to Corrigan in 1960. This land was then used for farming from 1974 to 1984, and then revegetated by the Bassendine Preservation Group in 1994. Shout out! Bilbarin was a victim of modern times. As travel by vehicle became faster and cheaper, towns that were close to commercial centres, in this case Corrigan, struggled to keep a footing. It became a lot easier to travel for goods, services and entertainment. Less people were also employed at farms as advances in technology automated certain tasks, reducing the overall population. Still, the third Bilbarin Hall had its day, although it peaked in the late 1950s and early 1960s. During that time, it hosted all sorts of events, meetings, ceremonies and parties. But as Corrigan became the centre of the local community, the hall was used less and less. By the 80s, the hall was in need of repair. The roof was particularly bad, with the ceiling starting to cave in. The local community may have started to realise what they could possibly lose, as it saw a resurgence in the 1990s with the formation of a hall committee. A water tank was installed in 1995, and the hall was rewired and connected to the power grid in 1996. The pan toilets out the back were even still operational as late as 1998, but the hall was again used intermittently by the late 90s. The ceiling was completely absent by then, and since there was no roof ventilation, it was an uncomfortable structure to use during hot or cold days. Fortunately, a conservation plan was created in 1998, which was funded by a 1997 Heritage program. This flagged the need for immediate action that included repairing roof damage and reinstating the ceiling. As such, in 1999, just shy of $10,000 was allocated for restoration works. By this time, the last 2 remaining buildings in town were the hall and the school teacher's residence. Although a fire station was opened next to the hall in 2009, being the first new building in Bilbarin since the third hall was built in the 1950s. Unfortunately, both the hall and the residence would be destroyed by a bushfire in 2022. This was a major fire for the area and affected more than just Bilbarin. The fire burnt 45,000 hectares of land, killed 1,000 livestock, destroyed 48 buildings, including 4 homes, and damaged another 30 properties. Countless amounts of farming equipment and materials were also lost, and 200 power poles were replaced. A DFES investigation found that the cause of the fire was accidental. There had been an authorised burn several days beforehand when there was no fire ban. And while the fire had been thought to be fully extinguished, it was reignited during catastrophic conditions. Several insurers representing farmers engaged a law firm in April of 2022. They claimed the burning permit shouldn't have been issued in the first place and were seeking legal action. I was unable to find any up-to-date information however, but I know these sorts of cases can take years. I lived in Parkerville during the devastating 2014 fire that affected both it, Stoneville and Mount Helena, and that court case was only resolved in 2021. The former school teacher's residence, which was still someone's home at the time, was completely destroyed by the fire, bar several chimneys, and the hall was gutted. Only 3 surrounding walls survive, although the front facade is remarkably intact, conifers and all. In August 2022, the Shire of Corrigan put out a survey asking the community what should be done with the hall remains, noting that the estimated cost to rebuild was over $1 million. The survey gave options to rebuild, demolish, convert into a picnic area, become a meeting room and toilet block, or lastly converted into a memorial gazebo. The results of the survey were not to rebuild, but instead reuse the remaining structure as a picnic area or gazebo. And community consultation has continued over the last few years, with updates on the project as recently as October 2025. Stephen Carrick Architects has since developed a concept and interpretation plan for the Shire of Corrigan. In the meantime, Bilbarin is still worth a visit. There's now signage throughout the entire town site explaining the history and what once occupied the now vacant land. This heritage trail was opened March 2004 by the Bilbarin Hall Committee thanks to Lottery West funding. Just be mindful around the former school teacher's house however, there's quite a bit of asbestos. This video was filmed during 40-degree heat earlier this year, the type of weather I'm not keen on filming in again. But shout out to Sony as my camera did not overheat. The same could not be said for my iPhone, or myself. I was down that way as I was filming the Corrigan Hotel. That was part of my State Hotels video, and I captured the entire trip within a membership vlog. There are many vlogs like this within the membership program. Some are short overnighters, while others run for multiple days and include lots of travel. This time around I actually stayed in the Corrigan Hotel itself because of the heat, but I usually camp, so there's plenty of that in the vlogs also. I car camp in a Subaru Forester using a platform I've built myself. There's a separate video where I show the construction process. There's also reconnaissance vlogs, vlogs at home about how I make my videos, and wildcards, like a video where I explore interesting places in Melbourne. There will also be a part 2 of that soon. The support program is just $3 a month and can be cancelled at any time. That $3 includes the extra content, shows your username at the end of the videos, and highlights any comments you might make. All money earned goes back into the production of future videos. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.